Okay, so then let's talk about time. Happy Easter! I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. I wanted to do this little video because this beautiful watch company, Filippo Loretti, sent me one of their fantastic watches. So they just asked me to review it for you, and they're giving us a special little discount. So if you check the description box down below, I'll have the discount code there for you. I think it's 15%, so that's quite nice of them. And so I just wanted to show you what it looks like. It comes with a beautiful little welcome to the Filippo Loretti family, and a warranty, of course. And then this is the watch. And I'm sure that my subscribers of quite a long time have noticed I love watches, and I usually prefer bigger male watches because men's watches are always so, I don't know, they're so much more beautiful. They have more detail. I know a few of you have sent me messages asking me about the watch that I wore in quite a few of my videos. It's a skeleton watch. So I know a few of you are gonna like this watch as much as I do. So this is what it looks like. The back is quite unique, and I think this is one of the things that I most like about this watch, is that it has a gorgeous design on the back that's reminiscent of Tartarian architecture. So I'm quite interested in the Tartarian conspiracy theory, and I've been doing a lot of research on it, especially in the last few months. It's winter. It's been kind of a good time to get a little bit deeper into those more mysterious conspiracy theories. So the Tartaria one has definitely been on the top of my list lately, and it ties well into the mud flood theory. So if you're interested in mud flood theory, then please do look up the Tartaria conspiracy theory. It's quite fascinating. And so that's one of the things that I most love, is that it has that Tartarian architecture on the back. It's a beautiful watch, it's comfortable, and I'm quite pleased, and I'm just delighted that Filippo Loretti chose me to do a review of their beautiful watch and to give us a discount. So yeah, so if you want one of your own, they also have jewelry as well. So you're not restricted to only buying a watch. And they do have women's watches that are smaller on the wrist. But if you're a little bit more like me, you like something a little bit different, then I would really recommend them. Now, since I'm talking about watches, I've been thinking about time a lot lately, because I've been kind of thinking, how am I going to tie this watch review into a video? And I have been wanting to talk to you about time for quite a while now, so let's do that. Okay, so then let's talk about time. One of the topics that I've brought up a few times on this channel is time real? And if it's real, how does it work? Is it something that's just our own conscious minds that are measuring changes in our environment? Or is time something external to us? Is it objective? Does it exist even if we don't exist? That's something that I find relevant, because if we're supposed to accept that space-time exists, the fabric of space-time, and gravity requires space-time to bend so that objects move along different paths, then we really should have a better understanding of what time is in and of itself. Because if time only exists as a mechanism of detecting and tracking change in our environment as conscious creatures, then that would mean that if there were no conscious creatures, then would it make sense to talk about time? And if it wouldn't, then what happens to the space-time fabric? What happens to gravity? What happens to all these concepts that physics has tied together through theoretical meanderings that are less and less tied to actual physical experiments, right? And so I want to talk a little bit about how we experience time, because science measures time in a very concrete way that serves the function for the scientific experiments that they're doing, but it's not necessarily representative of how we experience time, and it's not necessarily measuring something real. It's measuring something that's useful, but not necessarily real. So in science, we might measure time 1 and time 2, and we might compare, this is how things have changed, and that's how we know that this is time 1 and this is time 2, that time has passed. But we also know that science tells us that if we go really, really fast, approaching the speed of light, then suddenly time changes, time dilates, the speed at which time passes starts to change. And we are familiar with that concept because we know that when our emotions change, our experience of the rate at which time is passing starts to change as well, right? And so we have our own subjective experience of time dilation when it expands, and time compression. And so in an attempt to better understand how we process time as individuals, because our experience matters, our subjective conscious experience of the world matters, and we should never let science tell us things that go against our experience of the world and just blindly accept it on blind faith. We should challenge it and question it and say, does this statement about the world match my experience of the world? And if it doesn't, then where does that disparity come from? Does it come from an error in science? Or does it just come from the fact that I'm a very unique individual with a very different experience of the world? And so someone who set out to determine, does time speed up or slow down, was Dr. David Eagleman. So Dr. David Eagleman brought his students up onto this very high platform and then unexpectedly just pushed them off so that they fell headfirst down 50 feet into a net. Just there you are on a platform talking about your classes with your classmates, and then suddenly you get pushed off the platform and you're falling to your death. And what he wanted to see is the experience of time changing with the fear and the panic. And is time dilating? Is time slowing down? Or is time speeding up for the people that are falling? And so, to be very clever, what he did was he outfitted all the participants with a perceptual chronometer. So something akin to this very beautiful Philip Loretti watch, but a little bit different, because rather than showing the time, these perceptual chronometers basically were flashing numbers at a rate that was too fast for the person to consciously read. And so the numbers are flashing very, very quickly, and so consciously your brain just can't see the numbers because there's just too much light moving too quickly. And then the point of the experiment was when you're falling to what feels like your death, especially from your brain's perspective, you're just clicking into survival mode and you're just watching the ground come flying at you, because these people were falling 150 feet for 3 seconds and then they'd hit the net going 70 miles an hour. So yeah, that's going to trigger a little bit of panic. And so what he was hoping to find was that the participants would be able to look at their perceptual chronometers and see the numbers, because the expectation was that that fear, that panic, that car crash experience would slow time down from the subjective experience of the faller. And so then by slowing time down, the experience of time, they would be able to read the numbers on the watch. That's not what they found. Not for enough of the participants to be able to publish it as a result saying, yes, we managed to slow time down, the experience of time passing. But I was talking about this with a friend this week, and they brought up the point that, well, just because your processing speed is changing, maybe you're thinking more thoughts in 5 seconds than you normally would, that doesn't mean that your perceptual system is speeding up. So the light that's going into your eyes, and then it's activating the nerves, and then that has to go in through your brain into your visual system, and then that has to form an image, and then that image then has to go through the different processing parts of your brain to give it meaning, to figure out what's the important part of the image that we should process a little bit sooner, what's the less important part that we can process later. All of that might not change speed, but your cognition, your thinking speed might increase. And that was one of the flaws with this particular experiment, is that they didn't really take that into account. And also a lot of subjects just failed to look at the chronometer because they were just looking at the ground coming towards you. Only have 3 seconds to process that you're falling because it's quite sudden. And I do think your instinctive mode, your survival mode does kick in. And at that point, your attention is being drawn to what's most relevant. So your brain isn't going to be thinking, hey, let's look at this chronometer. Let's look at my watch and see what time it is. Your brain is going to be thinking, hey, let's look towards the ground and figure out how many seconds we have to live. Maybe you're doing a little life review. So they concluded from that study that your subjective experience of time doesn't change, but that when you remember the event, you remember it as having taken a lot longer. So after the poor traumatized students were removed from the net and allowed to stand on safe ground again, they were asked, how long do you think that took for you to fall? And then they said, now watch this other person fall, laugh a little bit, and then tell us how long you think it took that person to fall. And what they found was that people reported that it took them longer to fall than it took for the person that they're watching fall. And there's a difference of 36%. So that's actually quite significant, right? So, well, I mean, it is and it isn't. It's 1/3 longer. But in terms of seconds, that basically means you feel like you were falling for 4 seconds. And when you see someone else fall, you feel like it's taking them 3 seconds to fall. However, like a lot of science today, we have the data, and then we have to interpret the data. And then here's the part that gets so many people into trouble. You have to apply a framework of understanding that has underlying assumptions, that includes other theories that you have about the world, about what's important, about how things work. And then you apply these frameworks of understanding to draw your conclusions. And then people think, oh, if this is my data, and then I interpreted it, and then here's my conclusion, the conclusion must be right. And that's science. No, no, no. that's the problem with people who try to do science but do it badly. The underlying assumptions that you apply when you're drawing your conclusion can cause you to come up with the wrong conclusion. So in this study, they concluded that no, clearly our subjective experience of time is the same while we're falling, but our remembered experience of time is different. That's not necessarily the case. What we do know is that some people have a higher processing speed than other people. Some people process information at a higher rate, and some people process information at a slower rate. And these individual differences lead to very different outcomes. People who can have 10 thoughts in 5 seconds are more effective problem solvers than people who can only have 1 thought in 5 seconds. And so often, though the people who can have more thoughts in fewer seconds, well, they do better in problem solving.
They do better in pattern recognition. They do better at school. They do better on timed tests. They do better at debating. They are better lawyers. They can generate a lot more ideas in the 12 seconds it takes for something to happen. And so if you're arguing with them as a lawyer, then they'll maybe come up with more counter-arguments to what you're expressing.
And I experienced this in the sense of YouTube speed, which I play my videos. I'm playing all my videos now on YouTube at the 2x speed. You should watch my videos at 2x speed because for some reason, as soon as my camera's on, I start talking very slowly. When I watch my own videos, I can't watch them at anything less than 1.75, and I feel like the 2x speed is the best for my videos. But even when I'm watching other people's videos, I always 2x it. And I think that once you get used to that, when you try to watch a video at normal speed, it's extremely boring. There's not enough information to absorb per moment of sitting there watching the video, and that gets frustrating and it gets boring. And I think that that's one of the burdens of the people who maybe are processing information at a higher speed, is that for them, time is passing more slowly because they can cram a lot more thoughts into 1 second. So if you are left to sit in silence for 5 minutes, well, if one person is only having 12 ideas in those 5 minutes and someone else is having 45 ideas in those 5 minutes, if you're having 45 ideas in those 5 minutes, that feels like a long time. You've had time to think about all these things. You've had time to come up with complex theories. And so that's a long chunk of time. Whereas for the person who's just been sitting there like, I think maybe I'll go for an ice cream after this. For them, that time kind of passes rather quickly. They've had one little thought, they thought about ice cream, that made them feel a little bit happy, and then they're kind of looking forward to the future where there's going to be ice cream. Whereas the other person has had all these complex thoughts, and maybe they're thinking about the implications and the consequences. I think that their emotional valence is going to be slightly different. So it's easier to hold on to a little bit of bliss, a little bit of a happy feeling if you're just thinking, oh, I'm gonna go for ice cream later. And you just kind of sit in that thought for 5 minutes. Whereas if you're someone who's just thinking a lot of thoughts and their speed, the processing speed is faster, then you're thinking, okay, I should go for ice cream later. That would be nice. And then after that, I should think about this. And oh, what was that problem that I was trying to solve? And this might be a solution to it. And if I solve it this way, then that might apply to this other problem I've been having. And that solution, if I tweak it like this and I abstract the information from that domain onto this one, I might be able to solve this other tricky problem. And so then I think you're not maintaining that happy, blissful mood. And so I think that that's one of the burdens of information processing speeds that are a little bit higher is maybe more boredom when there's less stimulation. Like in a normal conversation with normal humans, you might find that less stimulating if your processing speed is set at a different rate. Or if your processing speed is a little bit slower, you might find yourself overwhelmed. There's too many ideas, too many words coming at you, and that's frustrating and stressful. So I think sometimes we underestimate the impact that processing speed might have on our social abilities and how we have fun with different kinds of people. And that's just something that I've been thinking a lot about lately. I think we've all had a lot of time alone because of COVID. So I'm a little bit worried with COVID. If we're watching more TV and TV moves at such a slow pace, then are we slowing down our own information processing speed? Or alternatively, because we're free from the influence of our friends and families, we're spending more time just thinking our own thoughts in our own little head all by ourselves, is our processing speed increasing because we now have the freedom from conformity, and not chosen conformity, but just the kind of the effects of peer pressure. If you're put in an environment where people are speaking at a certain rate, then you match that rate subconsciously. Your brain just gets entrained. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens when we come out of the never-ending lockdowns. Are we going to be faster thinkers or slower thinkers? And how is that going to work? I think that's going to be interesting. And so those are some of my thoughts about time. I'd like to hear what you think about time. Do you think time exists external to you? Do you think time is just a measurement device created by conscious beings to track changes in our environment? Or do you think that time somehow exists externally to us? And what do you think about how science measures it? And do you take their averages as truth, or do you just take it as a useful tool? I'd love to hear what you think about this, because this is a subject that I'm still working through. I'm still not sure of what I think about all the details of time and how it really works and how independent it is of us. And so I'd love to read your responses. So leave a comment down below, like this video if you enjoyed this content. Like this video if you want to see a new video soon. I know I haven't made a video in so long, but I'm hoping to post a little bit more often now. If you're new to my channel, hit the subscribe button. It helps me I think it increases me in the rank of search results. So if someone's looking for strange person talking about sometimes flat earth, conspiracy theories, sometimes time, they'll find me more easily if you like and subscribe. Okay, have a good night. Bye.